Welcome back to BioTrek Sailing. We are Pierre, Lisa, and our furry friend Tiller, sailing around the world in our Outremer 5X catamaran. In the last video, we left Mauritius and sailed to Réunion for just a couple days, and I left you just as we were passing south of Madagascar in the acceleration zone. This is a zone where there's currents and countercurrents, and the seas were very turbulent. That's our boat right there. So we're in a period of current. All right.
Isn't that pretty?
It's a very pretty, complicated current structure. This is night 2, and I think it's officially the roughest it's ever been on BioTrek. In this video, we continue sailing south of Madagascar through those currents and countercurrents and towards South Africa, where the next challenge will be to navigate through the Agulhas current. This is a current that travels down the length of Africa and is very dangerous if there's wind against current. So we're in part 2 of our sail to South Africa, and on our first part, it was quite rough. This is where I left you in the last video, which was at the end of our second night at sea, and the sun was just beginning to come up and it was still quite rough. According to this, we're just coming out of the high current area, but I'm not sure if it's really true. The waves haven't faded yet, but then I guess it takes a little bit of time. The thing about this passage is that we know it won't last forever. It's rough, but we're confident in the boat. It's a good boat, we're doing good speed, and we're going to get out of it fast, so that's always a good thing. It's 10 to 6 in the morning. We're getting into the no current area, and actually it truly is getting better despite the true wind speed. 23 knots, 24, sometimes going up to 26 in the gusts. It looks fully light. The sun's just coming up. I don't think we've quite had sunrise, but always better when the light's up when it's a little rough. And it's definitely getting better, definitely. And I'm thinking about making some banana bread with some old bananas. That's how calm it's getting. I can even cook again. Nothing better than a bit of coffee in the morning. Yeah. So the waves really aren't that bad. It's just that every once in a while you get a big one. Bam! It goes right over the boat with the waterfall into the cockpit. Right, we're on Thursday, and a little bit more of the same thing. Pretty windy. The waves are a little bit calmer, but we still get a big bang once in a while. We just had one. The coffee pot fell down. Luckily the carafe didn't broke, but we had coffee everywhere. So that's been cleaned up and things are put away, and the kitchen's looking pretty tidy right now. But the fruit's fallen on the floor a couple times, and so some of it's a little bruised. And okay, we're ready for the next big wave right now, but that's a bit unusual. We haven't had big waves since the Gulf Stream when we first left from Boston. And I think these waves are even worse. So if you want to see what the Gulf Stream crossing was like, you can go back in time to that video, which would be in 2020. So yes, this is a challenging passage. Everyone says the passage to South Africa is challenging, and it is. And we're just south of Madagascar right now. We're keeping the two reefs in the main for now. This morning we had the Genoa out, but last night it was so bad we had the two reefs in the main and the staysail. It's just these short, square waves that bang. And I better get back inside before I catch one. Although I'm on the leeward side, it's a little safer here. But it's been really soaking on the other side of the boat. Starlink. So we are doing a chit-chat link up in the morning and the evening. Everyone's just showing a screenshot. As you can hear, I had a microphone problem, but basically I'm telling you that Pump 3 lost their steering last night. We're waiting until it calms down a bit so we can go in the engine room and check our steering because we had the same guy doing maintenance. And another incident was Saga lost their rudder last night. Pierre's a little concerned, but right now it's a little too rough for him to go in the engine room and have a look. But that's obviously a concern if something goes wrong with the steering. So we'll be checking that out today. So it's still November 16th, and Pierre's in the engine room. He's just checking the steering system because Pump 3 lost their steering last night. And we had the same maintenance done on our steering, so he's down there making sure everything's all right. I closed in the engine room because some of the waves are blowing over. I hope everything's all right. At this point, we're just passing south of Madagascar, and by day 4, you're just getting used to these currents and countercurrents and all the banging going on. So the rally's going to Richards Bay, but we've decided to go straight to Port Elizabeth, Richards Bay, and Port Elizabeth. These are the currents, and this is where we are today. So we are just south of Madagascar. The wind map. So we're just going to come into a little bit more wind. It's 5:30 in the morning and we've got first light, and the seas are not too bad today, so mostly following seas. Once in a while we get slammed by a big wave, but mostly following seas. Pretty nice. There's my little tiller sleeping until it's light. Got a nice little cushion, just like you like. You're wanting your breakfast? So the reason that we're planning to go to Port Elizabeth rather than Richards Bay is mainly weather. It looks like we have a weather window to get all the way there. And then if you go to Richards Bay, you have to deal with the current, and so you don't know how long it's going to take you to get to Cape Town. Usually you have to stop into different ports because the wind cycles around the clock from north to south, and you really can't make any progress if there's a south wind because you have waves against current, and the waves, if that south wind lasts any amount of time, the waves can be very large. It's been reported they've been up to 20 meters or 60 feet. So usually the trip is planned in different legs, ducking into towns all the way along, taking at least a week, usually 2. But if we go to Port Elizabeth, we just duck into the current and into the port one time on the way to Cape Town. So that's one reason. The other reason is because we do want to get to Cape Town, have lots of time to do some work on the boat. And we've been warned by some of the marine stores that the country essentially closes down on December 15th. So a lot of things will be closed on the date that the rally is supposed to arrive into Cape Town. And we want to enjoy our Christmas because another reason is we have our friend Catherine arriving in Cape Town, and you met her in a previous video, the video on Indonesia, and we're really looking forward to spending time with her when she comes to Cape Town because it's her hometown. So you make it as you wish. You add the guacamole, the cheese, jalapeno sauce, coleslaw, and this is a remoulade.
Perfect job.
No, Savannah, it's gonna come out, right, Pierre? No, Savannah. asking if we're going to jibe, and he says, well, we change the blue cord if we jibe, and the answer is yes, we change the blue cord when we jibe. That's our net jib that prevents any chance of having an hourglass formation around the forestay.
À quelle heure on arrive? Oui, au sud de Madagascar. Sud de Madagascar et on a trop du vent pendant 1 ou 2 jours là.
Pierre's always inspecting the rigging and on top of anything that might need a little repair while we're underway. We're on day 6 and no wind. We're motoring. There's a bit of wind, but we're going straight downwind. The wind's supposed to pick up a bit today, so let's hope so. So fuel resources are not unlimited. The wind has been lots of wind or no wind, and that's kind of what this passage has been like so far. And we're expecting lots of wind coming up, so let's see what the day brings. So on day 6, finally the conditions are right to try our new Jenniker that was delivered in Mauritius. This is the first time we've rolled it out. If you've followed our adventures, you'll know that we had our Jenniker blow up on our crossing from Coco's Island to Mauritius, so we were happy to have a new one that we could use with the right conditions. It was bath time for Tiller. She was smelling a little bit like a stinky dog. So since we have no wind and it's pretty calm, I thought, okay, I'm gonna take the stinky dog in the shower and make her smell a little nicer. It always makes her frisky, especially when it's a little cooler out today, but I'm gonna have to go change my shirt and put a t-shirt on because it's a little cooler than yesterday and we're supposed to get some wind. We're still flying the Jenniker without the mainsail because we're just too far downwind right now, and so our speed is really handicapped. We need to speed up because we want to get to the Agulhas current before the winds will switch. So we need to speed up. Come on, wind! So I'm making a Mexican casserole for tomorrow because we're expecting some bad weather. That way I don't have to cook, I just have to put it into the oven. Even in the middle of the ocean, it's important to keep a careful lookout so you don't hit things like these. In the morning, I just woke up here because I thought we were going a little bit too far south. We're about to enter a high current area, and we don't want to be pushed further south or we'll have no wind tomorrow. So he took the preventer off the mainsail. We're going a little more upwind, and our speed just increased by 1 knot by getting everything set properly. The sails pulled in a little tighter. But we need to get across that ship and then we can bear off a little bit. So there is a lot of shipping traffic going on. Yeah, when I looked on the AIS, it's like freaking amazing how many ships are right there.
Oh yeah.
And they're all heading towards the Cape.
Of course. Yeah, no, it's all of the ships which are over 1,000 feet, 60, 70 foot draft. They can't make it through the Suez Canal. So they don't have a choice, they have to go this route. And people which are on a low budget also go here because the Suez Canal is actually quite expensive. But
It's Monday mid-morning and steering by hand. I'm helping the autopilot play the wind shifts because the wind is very shifty and we need to keep our speed up because we want to get to the Aguilas current at the right time. So steering by hand this way we can always beat the autopilot, but the sails are adjusted in a way that got to really keep a narrow wind angle. We're trying to be at 110 and between 90 and 120 at the maximum, so just constant playing with the changing the steering. That's what's going on this morning. Monday late afternoon, and we've gone from having nice wind with the Jennifer up to no wind, and we got the motor on again. So just kind of looking at 8 knots right now, which is really not enough because we're straight downwind. So it's not enough to put up our spinnaker, and we're supposed to get a little bit later tonight. We're supposed to get up to 30 knots. So this area of the world has been a little up and down, and you just have to keep changing the sails and dealing with it, and hopefully have enough fuel to get to destination, which I think we do, but we're carefully monitoring it at this point because we're supposed to go through another area of no wind when we cross the Aguilas current, which is probably a good thing. And but we'll see, because every time Care downloads weather and routing, it changes. It's the 21st, so day 8. Let me go in here. And the wind just completely died about half an hour ago. I've got the motor on. It dropped to like 5 knots. It's now coming back, so not quite enough to roll out the Genoa, but let's see. And it has switched to the north as predicted, and we've had a head current. We're not in the Aguilas current yet, but there's some offshoots that should bring us in about the right direction. And of course we're keeping a very careful eye on weather. Pierre's downloading it like practically every hour, but then the weather is changing almost that much. We are staying offshore. There's another low coming. We'll be offshore, and when that passes we'll dart through the current and ride it down to Port Elizabeth. So that'll happen tomorrow, well, tonight I guess. So not really looking forward to it, honestly. We've done the Gulf Stream enough times. I know what wind against current is like, and actually even in the Gulf Stream, when you don't have wind against current, it can be pretty rough. So it's crazy, the wind just all of a sudden came back. Wow. It's got the sails out, and we're going. We're in our position, which is facing the direction where the control should be. We have some nice speed right now. So we have speed over ground, SOG, or SPW, speed through the water. So I guess we just got out of that current against us, and our speed is more stable now, which is great. So right now we're really focused on speed because we really need to get to the Aguilas current before we get another front coming with the south winds. So it's super important that we keep our speed up so we get there on the predicted time with the predicted wind. All by yourself. How fast are we going? And are we catching up time?
I don't know. It depends. Right now we are having winds and conditions which we're not supposed to. The wind should be from the south, slight wind, switching to the southwest. And we still have that northeaster. So we're just stretching every moment we can out of it. Every mile we can.
It feels like we're going fast. I see 12 knots. Going up to 13. So not quite where we have to take a second reef.
No, not at all. On the broad reach. No, it's only sometimes you get a wave combination where the boat turns up a bit. But very nice.
The seas are definitely building. Right across the horizon. The camera doesn't do justice. It's our last night and we're about to cross the Agilis Current, so I'm taking the watch for Pierre because there's been just too many things changing in the last hours. Pierre and I just went and took a reef. Pierre's sleeping upstairs and we're both going to do this shift tonight, so we'll be a little tired tomorrow. Let's hope all goes well. Here's the prediction. So the weather we've been looking at on time zero doesn't seem to be very bright because we're not expecting any wind, and all of a sudden it went way up to like 20 knots. Pierre and I quickly took a reef, and now we still have wind and we're still sailing and we're about to enter the current. So I'm looking at predict wind, and that explains a little bit. We have a southeast wind. Crossing the current that night was pretty uneventful. The next morning we had very flat seas and there were dolphins jumping all around us. We had decided to change our destination from Port Elizabeth to East London, and the reason is because the ARC boats were still taking all the space in Port Elizabeth, and also it was reputed to have a lot of dust from the manganese mining that was going on, and it was blowing onto the boats. As we entered the port in East London, we saw cars lined up in the dock. So there was a Mercedes factory and they were lined up, and we would watch ships come in and ships go out. They loaded the cars onto the ships. Here's a car carrier coming in, assuming to pick up all those cars that are lined along the dock. We're just coming into Port Elizabeth, and all those cars lined up there are Mercedes, because it's supposed to have the biggest Mercedes factory in the world. So they're all right there ready to be shipped, I guess, around the world. Peter, the Commodore at the East London Yacht Club, was amazingly helpful in getting us checked in. Customs came right away, but the guy from immigration was on vacation, so Peter arranged from the guy from Port Elizabeth to drive all the way to East London so that it could get us checked in, because Pierre-Yves was catching a plane the next day and needed to get his passport stamped. I got the dog here at the bar. I got Pierre.
Look at that!
Pierre-Yves.
We get the
We have Peter.
Real time,
It's-
UTC, midnight.
It's 11:30 at night, and we're waiting for immigration to come and stamp our passports. Driving all the way from Port Elizabeth.
Brighter with that. Look at that.
Traveling 300 kilometers just to sign you into the country.
Isn't that fabulous? That's called service, except for, you know, we've had a few drinks. maybe a few too many. Like sparkling water, you know, those kind of drinks, right?
Water.
Only. Oh yeah,
And,
sparkling
orange
water
juice.
and orange juice.
And
Yeah.
lactose
Pills for the bellies. Immigration arrived just after midnight after traveling 300 kilometers from Port Elizabeth. They stamped our passports, and then we went back to the boat to enjoy a little bit more music before Pierre-Yves was to leave very, very early the next morning.
Il m'a semblé voir trop briller ses yeux. Je lui ai dit, si tu pleures pour un garçon, tu seras pas la dernière. Souvent les poissons sont bien plus affectueux. Pour crier qui je suis, j'aurais voulu être un auteur pour pouvoir raconter la vie.
We said goodbye to Pierre-Yves and he caught a flight home to Réunion. Our stay in East London was way too short. We really enjoyed it, but the weather was right to proceed to Cape Town. As a little bonus, here's some pictures of the food that we ate en route from our trip from La Réunion to East London, South Africa.